This is something we kind of saw coming. We planted the flag a little bit, didn't bury it all the way down into the soil. But whenever the Broncos have struggled this year, the question of the $37 million in 2025 base salary that becomes fully guaranteed for Russell Wilson, would that be picked up? Would that contract be terminated? What will happen between the team and the player by the time March rolls around? At times it went away, at times it came back. And most recently it came back after Russell Wilson and Sean Payton were seen jawing at each other on the sideline. Now, that misstates what happened. Russell just stood there. Payton was the one doing the jawing. And it had kind of a quality to it that felt like Payton was saying something along the lines of, I've told you this 20 bleep times this year. And it was an exasperation. That was the overall demeanor of Payton, that I just can't get this guy to do what I need him to do. He won't do the things I'm telling him to do. The offense isn't working. And you fast forward to Tuesday, there were some comments from Sean Payton about the offense that were very ominous as it relates to the guy who's responsible for the offense. And Payton said, we've got some things to clean up. Well, what are you going to clean up in 2 weeks? The season's almost over. So, again, we had pointed out the possibility of, if the Broncos lose this week and become eliminated from playoff consideration, next week Jarrett Stidham would play. They put Russell Wilson in bubble wrap, because here's the key. This is why he was benched. And I've buried the lead here, but if you're watching this, you know by now Russell Wilson's been benched. He's benched because of that $37 million. If he gets an injury that keeps him from passing a physical by the time the $37 million in injury guarantee becomes full guarantee, it's already a full guarantee. You don't have an opportunity to rip up the contract and avoid the $37 million in full guarantees that kick in for 2025. And benching him now is aimed primarily, if not exclusively, at preserving their ability to just walk away, tear it up, don't get anything in return. And I'll talk about the options for dealing with the contract coming up. This is about making sure they'll have the ability to say, it's over, it's done, see you later. And as I pointed out at PFT, there's kind of no coming back from this. How do they come back from this? How does Russell Wilson gladly and happily keep playing for the Broncos when he was benched while they were still alive for the postseason? This isn't, we're eliminated, it's over, it's done, we're just playing out the string. They're still alive, and they're taking him out, and they're putting Jarrett Stidham in. And the way that it was reported by Adam Schefter, they're looking for a spark offensively. No, they're looking to preserve the $37 million. The cash and cap that they will incur if he's on the roster as of the 5th day of the 2024 league year. And if he's injured, and if he can't pass a physical, they can't do anything about it. That's what this is about. There is no coming back from that. They're benching him while they're still alive. They're entrusting their playoff hopes to Jarrett Stidham. For the second straight year, Jarrett Stidham gets thrust into late season starter. Last year with the Raiders, they were done. But it was the same reasoning. $40 million fully guaranteed for Derek Carr that would have vested in February, 3rd or 4th day after the Super Bowl. And remember, they were going to try to work out a trade, and that was never going to happen. It was never going to work that way. They ultimately have to cut him, and they did. The Broncos could still trade Russell Wilson, but it's going to take a massive restructuring of the contract to make it happen. Why does Russell Wilson go along with that? Just force his release, and then he goes wherever he wants to go. He doesn't get guided to some other team because he's got the ultimate leverage. They've got to move on from him by the 5th day of the 2024 league year, or that $37 million becomes fully guaranteed, period. So all he has to do is sit back and do nothing. It's the one thing we can all do, nothing at all. And he'll get his freedom. And he'll get his freedom early. Not before free agency starts, but early enough that everyone will know he's going to be available. And maybe they'll do him a favor and cut him before then. Regardless, how can it continue? And we don't know any of the specifics about what happened behind the scenes, but it's possible that the two sides tried to work out some sort of a revised deal. Maybe the Broncos raised the possibility of, this is what we're going to offer you as an alternative to the current contract. And if that's not good enough, we're just going to go our separate ways. Oh, and we're going to bench you to end the season. And presumably, if that offer was made, it was rejected. Otherwise, Russell Wilson wouldn't be benched with 2 weeks left. There would have been some sort of revision to the contract. It's a massive blow to the ego of a guy who was on track for the Hall of Fame. had a very bad year last year, was better this year, but apparently not good enough. In the eyes of the new coach of the team, the guy who has all the power, Sean Payton, he decided after 15 games, enough. Not for me, not my tempo, not my cup of tea. And I go back to 2022, and I wonder whether or not George Payton's ultimately going to be fired. This was before Payton got there. They trade for Russell Wilson in March, after Aaron Rodgers decides to stay in Green Bay one more year. Because remember, they hired Nathaniel Hackett with the idea that they're going to get Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers stays in Green Bay. The same day that that news was announced, boom, deal's in place to trade for Russell Wilson. So he comes to town in March with 2 years left on his contract. Now, every other contract he'd had before that, he gets an extension with 1 year left. Labor Day weekend rolls around, new contract for Russell Wilson. Massive deal. Market value or close to it. Big guarantees, rolling guarantees, where the guarantee for 2024 vested before 2023 even comes along. The guarantee for 2025 vested in 2024. It ties the two sides together, and the Broncos were more than happy to do it without him ever even taking a snap for them. They were more than happy to do it. If I'm Sean Payton, Exhibit A, in the case that I make to Greg Penner, the CEO of the team, as to why I need my own general manager, Exhibit A, this guy recommended that you give Russell Wilson this contract when we should have just seen what he could do for a year before we commit to anything. Unless he was banging the drum hard, and his agent, Mark Rodgers, who benefits from having only one NFL client, so he can drive the hardest possible bargain without worrying about any potential ramifications with his other relationships for his other clients. He can go all in on Russ. If Mark Rodgers was pounding on doors saying, I want a new contract, I want a new contract, I want a new contract, that's one thing. If he wasn't, why the hell did you do it? Didn't need to do it. Maybe they thought it's going to get more expensive. It would have been less expensive based upon what we saw in 2022. So it's over now. It's just a matter of time. I don't want to say 100% it's done, because you never know when crazier things have happened. And maybe at the end of the day, Mark Rodgers sees what else is out there and ultimately decides to work out some sort of a revised deal and stay in Denver because Russell doesn't want to move, and Russell's willing to forgive and forget, and he will have taken this huge hit to his overall perception and reputation. That's fine. I stay in Denver. I'm going to make as much here as I would make somewhere else. Sometimes guys will take less somewhere else just because they don't want to be perceived as capitulating to the team that squeezed them to take less than they were supposed to get. We've seen players just retire because they weren't able to find anywhere else what they were supposed to get from the team that they had a contract with. So we'll see how that plays out. But first thing to keep in mind, the big picture, trade versus release. Cap charge. If he's traded before June 1, the Broncos take a $72 million cap hit for 2024 if he's traded. And I don't think he'll be traded. If he's traded, it'll be before the $37 million becomes fully guaranteed, and it'll be part of a new contract that is revised dramatically. And again, why does Russell Wilson need to do that? Just say, keep me or cut me. I'm not going to agree to any revision of my contract. I'm not going to do anything. You keep me or you cut me. And then you go pick your next team. And you're always going to get more as a free agent because there's a balance there. And every team does it differently. But when you have to give up draft pick compensation, that makes you less willing to give up salary. And the less you have to give up to get a guy, maybe the more you'll pay him. I think generally speaking, a guy can always do better as a free agent than what he can do with the contract he negotiates as part of a trade. Because as a free agent, the team's getting him free and clear. So I think he'll be released. And I think the Broncos will end up releasing him with a post-June 1 designation, unless they want to take the full cap hit in 2024. And that full cap hit would be $89 million in 2024. Now, if they cut him with a post-June 1 designation, it becomes $35.4 million in 24 and $53.6 million in 25. I think that's the more likely course for the Broncos. Gives them more flexibility in 24. If they don't spend all that cap money, they can roll it over to the next year and offset the 53.6. But that's what they're looking at. Now, they'd be entitled to some offsets too when he goes elsewhere and some of that guaranteed money gets earned from a new team. I think the offsets would kick in the next year, but I think this makes the most sense. Cut him with a post-June 1 designation. He goes somewhere else and you get a dollar for dollar credit for whatever he makes from his next team. So, what's next for Russell Wilson? I ran this by the PFT writers. Here's the list we came up with, just the short, quick, rough list. And these may or may not be practical from a cap standpoint. But the Raiders, that would make a ton of sense. Stick it to the Broncos, grab their quarterback, and they clearly could use an upgrade at the position. The Steelers, Russell Wilson played high school football in Richmond. Mike Tomlin, the coach of the Steelers, has an affinity for players from that area. He's an upgrade over Kenny Pickett. I mean, say what you will about Russell Wilson, he's still a pretty damn good quarterback. He's just not as good as Sean Payton believes that he needs right now. He would be an upgrade over Kenny Pickett. That's a fascinating potential wrinkle. Washington, the Commanders. Sam Howell benched. Now, what is the next regime going to think? Depends on who the coach is and whether or not that coach would be inclined to believe that he can work with Russell Wilson to get the most out of him. The Falcons need an upgrade at quarterback. The Vikings may need a quarterback just because Kirk Cousins can go anywhere he wants. And one of my first thoughts was, what about Cousins to Denver? The problem is it's going to be very hard to fit him under the salary cap because of this Russell Wilson cap charge. Again, it's going to be 35-4 and 53-6 over 2024 and 2025. How do you take a market value quarterback contract and make it work? I think the more likely reality is Jarrett Stidham gets a chance next year to be the guy. And then maybe Sean Payton drafts somebody and develops somebody. But he's got to have a plan. I also thought maybe Sean Payton and Tom Brady finally get together. Brady comes out of retirement after 1 year and coaches, plays quarterback for the Denver Broncos with Sean Payton as the coach. Because remember, 2022, that was the plan. Payton and Brady in Miami. Maybe Payton and Brady in Denver. Maybe that happens. I'm kind of joking when I say it, but who the hell knows? You never know what's going to happen. That's why we're always trying to get ahead of the curve. This gets back to the whole fan fiction conversation that I had with Hank a few weeks ago on Pardon My Take. We've been throwing out the idea of Russell Wilson being benched and being out after this year because we're trying to read the tea leaves and understand which way the ball's moving because crazy shit happens all the time. And this is the latest example. And if you're not really paying attention, you're surprised by this. If you're locked in and you're reading PFT, you're not surprised by this because we've been talking about it really ever since Sean Payton became the head coach. Here are the stakes. After this year, they got a decision to make. Most people assume, oh, no, they have to keep him around next year. No, they don't. Not with $37 million that becomes fully guaranteed in March and has him, as a practical matter, their quarterback through 2025. So I think it's over. I think he's gone after this year. I think he'll be released with a post-June 1 designation. And I think he'll land with one of the teams we discussed. Raiders, Steelers, Washington, Falcons, Minnesota. Those seem to be the candidates for now. And you don't know what other teams are thinking. Maybe there's a team out there that secretly covets Russell Wilson and will pounce on the opportunity to get him. I don't know. Patriots as well. Didn't mention the Patriots. Although, I don't know how well he takes hard coaching. Very hard coaching from Sean Payton. Now, he didn't respond at all when Payton was giving it to him during that Lions game. Maybe that's what Bill Belichick wants, somebody who'll just take it. But he'd be an upgrade for the Patriots as well. I'm glad I remembered to mention them.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.